Hanging out with Chip and Mike turned into a regular thing. Today they weren't even playing games. They were just sitting at a booth, drinking sodas and talking, trying to ignore the animatronic animals' annoying music as much as they could. "You know what movie I liked?" Chip said. His polo shirt was peach-colored today. Oswald loved the guy, but really, didn't he own one shirt that wasn't the color of an Easter egg? "The Eternal Song." "Seriously?" Mike said, pushing his huge glasses up on his nose. "That movie was so boring. I was like, The Eternal Song is the perfect title for this movie because I don't think it's ever going to end." They all laughed, and then Chip said, "What did you think of it, Oz?" "I haven't seen that one," Oswald said. He said that a lot when hanging out with Chip and Mike. Oswald always listened to them talk about movies, and shows they liked. When they mentioned one he didn't know, he'd look it up online when he got home. He made a list of 80s movies he wanted to watch, and checked the TV listings on the DVR to see if any of them might be showing. Oswald participated in Chip and Mike's conversations as much as he could. It was like being a foreign exchange student. He sometimes had to fake his way through by smiling and nodding and being generally agreeable. "Man, you need to get out more," Mike said. "Maybe you can go to the movies with Chip and me sometime." "That would be cool," Oswald said, because what else could he say? "Actually, I'm from the distant future, and I don't think it's physically possible for me to see you any place but at Freddy Fazbear's at 1985. They'd both think that was a joke on Mike because his favorite movie was Back to the Future. Name one movie you've seen that you really like," Chip said to Oswald. "I'm trying to figure out what your taste is." Oswald's mind went blank. What was a movie from the 80s? E.T.? E.T.? Mike slapped the table, laughing. E.T. was like 3 years ago. You really do need to get out more. Do they not have movie theaters where you come from? They do, Oswald thought, and they have Netflix and PlayStation and YouTube and social media, but he didn't say it. Of course there was technology Chip and Mike talked about that he had only the vaguest knowledge of, like VCRs and boomboxes and cassette tapes. And he constantly had to remind himself not to talk about things like cell phones and tablets and the internet. He tried not to wear t-shirts with characters and references that might confuse them or the other customers at 1985 Freddy Fazbear's. "Yeah, we definitely need to bring you up to date," Chip said. "If you only knew," Oswald thought. "Hey, do you want to play some games?" Mike said. "I feel the skee-ball calling me, but I promise I'll go easy on you guys." Chip laughed. "No, you won't. You'll murder us." "You guys go ahead," Oswald said. "I think I'll just stay at the table." "What, and watch the show?" Mike said, nodding in the direction of the creepy characters on the stage. "Is something wrong? If you've suddenly decided you like Freddy Fazbear's music, we need to get you help fast." "No, nothing's wrong," Oswald said, but really something was. For his first few visits to 1985 Freddy Fazbear's, it hadn't even occurred to him that he was basically mooching off of Chip and Mike's generosity, because he had never had any money of his own. And even if he wasn't broke in his own time zone, would the money he brought from the present day even work in 1985? It was kind of pitiful being broke in 2 decades. Finally he said, "I just feel like I'm always taking your money because I never have any." "Hey dude, it's cool," Chip said. "We hadn't even noticed." "Yeah," Mike said. "We just figured your grandma never gave you any money. I know my grandma doesn't except when it's my birthday." They were being really nice, but Oswald still felt embarrassed. If they had talked about his lack of money, that meant they had noticed it. "How about I just go hang out with you while you play?" Oswald said. When he stood up, he felt a strange heaviness in his pockets. Something in them was so heavy he felt like his jeans might fall down. He reached in his pockets and pulled out double handfuls of 1985 Freddy Fazbear's game tokens. He produced handful after handful and dumped them on the table. "Or we could all play using these," he said. He had no idea how to explain the magic that had just occurred. "I guess I forgot I was wearing these pants. The ones that had all the tokens in them?" Chip and Mike looked a little confused, but then they grinned and started raking coins from the table into their empty soda cups. Oswald did the same. He decided just to go with the weirdness. He didn't know how the tokens got there, but then again, he didn't really know how he got there either. In the morning, as Dad was driving him to the library, Oswald asked, "Dad, how old were you in 1985? I was just a couple years older than you," Dad said. "And other than baseball, all I could think about was how many quarters I had to spend at the arcade. Why do you ask?" No reason in particular, Oswald said. I've just been doing some research. Jeff's Pizza. Back before it was Jeff's Pizza, it was some kind of arcade, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Dad's voice sounded strange, nervous maybe. He was quiet for a few seconds, then said, "But it closed." "Like everything else in this town," Oswald said. "Pretty much, yeah," Dad said, pulling up in front of the library. Maybe it was Oswald's imagination, but it seemed like his dad was relieved to get to their destination so he wouldn't have to answer any more of his questions. At 11 o'clock sharp, Oswald headed over to Jeff's Pizza, as had become his habit. With Jeff nowhere in sight, Oswald proceeded to the pit. After his count to 100, he stood. There were noises, but not the usual ones of Freddy Fazbear's. Screams, crying children, yells for help, the fast footfalls of people running, chaos. Were Chip and Mike okay? Were they even here? Was anybody here okay? He was afraid. Part of him wanted to disappear back into the pit, but he was worried about his friends. Also, he was burning with curiosity about what was going on, even though he knew whatever it was horrible. He wasn't in danger, he told himself, because this was the past, a time way before he was born. His life couldn't be in danger in a time before he existed, could it? His stomach was in knots. He moved through the crowds, past crying mothers running with their toddlers in their arms, past dads grasping children's hands and leading them swiftly towards the exit, their faces masks of shock. "Chip! Mike!" he called, but his friends were nowhere to be seen. Maybe they hadn't come to Freddy Fazbear's today. Maybe they were safe. Scared, but feeling as if he had to know what was happening, Oswald walked in the opposite direction from everyone else, with an escalating feeling of dread. In front of him stood the man in the yellow bunny costume. If it was a man under there. The bunny opened a door that said "Private" and went inside. Oswald followed. The corridor was long and dark. The rabbit looked at him with blank eyes and an unchanging grin, then walked farther down the hall. Oswald wasn't chasing the rabbit. He was letting the rabbit lead him, as if he were in a terrifying version of Alice in Wonderland, going down the rabbit hole. The rabbit stopped in front of a door with a sign reading "Party Room," and beckoned for Oswald to come inside. Oswald was shaking with terror, but he was too curious to refuse. Besides, he kept thinking, "You can't hurt me, I haven't even been born yet." Once inside the room, it took Oswald a few seconds to register what he was actually seeing, and a few more seconds for his brain to process it. They were lined up against the wall, which was painted with images of the place's mascots, the grinning bear, the blue bunny, and the bird girl. Half a dozen kids, none of them older than Oswald, their lifeless bodies propped into sitting positions, their legs stretched out in front of them. Some of them had their eyes closed, as if asleep. Others' eyes were open, frozen in an empty, doll-like stare. They were all wearing Freddy Fazbear birthday party hats. Oswald couldn't tell how they had died, but he knew the rabbit was responsible for it, that the rabbit had wanted him to see his handiwork. Maybe the rabbit wanted Oswald to be his next victim, to join the others lined up against the wall with their unseeing eyes.